Okay, the title of my sermon today is Climate Change in Light of the Bible. Climate change in light of the Bible. So what is climate change? Is climate change true? If so, what do we do about it? Okay, so Michael was reading there in Ecclesiastes 1, start there in verse 4. It says, "One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever." Notice that, but the earth abideth forever. So that means the earth that we have now will always be. It won't be always the same, but we will always have the earth. In verse 5 it says, "The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits." And that's just saying how the wind operates in circuits. "All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full, until the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again." So even the Bible back then, the people that wrote this, or at least God inspired these people to write this, that they knew the water evaporated and it came back down as in rain. So there's a cycle. Okay? Verse 8, "All things are full of labor, men cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing." Now pay attention to verse 9. "The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun." That seems a little bit poetic there too. So what is climate change? Well, what does climate mean? So I looked it up in, I think it was dictionary.com. It says, "The composite or generally prevailing weather conditions of a region as temperature, air pressure, humidity, precipitation, sunshine, cloudiness, and winds throughout the year averaged over a series of years." So basically, it's weather averaged over a number of years. And then it had a couple other definitions, region or area characterized by given climate. So if we want to move to a warm climate, that would also be a definition. Or the prevailing attitude, standards, or environmental condition of a group. Like we're in a climate of media indoctrination these days. So what do they mean by climate change? So they got this theory that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is trapping heat, so it cannot be reflected back to outer space. Is trapping heat like a greenhouse, or like a hot car on a summer day, right? The heat gets in there and it doesn't escape, and you open the door and like, ooh, it's hot. And we don't even live down in the south. So that's what they're saying. It's trapping the heat and it's not getting out, and the whole globe is warming. It's like global warming is what term they used to use, except for in winter, not too many people bought that. So they say the sea level is rising because the ice is melting, you know, at the polar ice cap, and we're going to get more and worse storms. So I read this article on skepticalscience.com, and when you hear this website address, skepticalscience.com, you think it's actually science is skeptical of what the media is trying to push, but actually they're skeptical of global warming skeptics, is what they are. So I'll just read you an excerpt from it. It says, "What happens when the planet gets warmer? More extreme weather, disappearing Arctic sea ice, and receding glaciers have consequences, such as less habitable coastal areas, decline of the polar bears, and the disappearing fresh water supplies for billions of people. The current rate of sea level rise is 3.3 millimeters per year. In English, that's about 1/8 of an inch, which is cause for concern in low-lying or hurricane-prone coastal areas like Bangladesh, or certain disappearing Pacific islands, or the U.S. Gulf Coast." So they're worried about the water going up 1/8 of an inch. And how they measure that with the tides coming in and out, and the waves don't stay quite still, how they measure 1/8 of an inch each year, well, there's probably a way to measure it, but the science just seems ridiculous. But listen to this, okay? It says, "This becomes a national security and military concern when there are millions of climate refugees with nowhere to go." So they're trying to scare people with it's going to become a military issue and security issue. They will do what they must to survive, as we all would, and they'll go to China, Australia, US, and elsewhere. They probably won't be welcomed with open arms. Other consequences of global warming include extended droughts and encroaching deserts, increasing wildfires and insect infestations, and changing rainfall and agricultural patterns. The oceans and marine life are doubly affected by global warming, first by an increase in temperature, which intensifies hurricanes and melts sea ice, and second by increased acidity caused by dissolved CO2. And these aren't even the worst case scenarios, they say. So they want us scared. That's the whole idea, is they want people scared, because scared people are easier to control. Okay? And what does it say in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7? It says, "For God hath not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." So we should not be scared. Go to Matthew chapter 24. So us as Christians, we should not be scared. We should not have the spirit of fear. We should not worry about climate change, whether or not it would be true. I'm not saying it is. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But we should not be scared. We should not have fear. In Revelation 21 verse 8, and I think all of you are familiar with this, the Bible says, "But the fearful and unbelieving." So fearful is the first thing that's listed there. "And the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." Okay, so if you're there in Matthew chapter 24, let's look at verse number 4. Matthew 24 verse 4 says, "And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. The end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places, and these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake." So look at verse number 7 there. And that looks kind of familiar with what they're saying is going to happen with global warming, right? It talks about famines and pestilences and earthquakes in verse 7. Well, the things they're talking about global warming, droughts that causes famines, right? And it talks about insect infestations. Those are pestilences, okay? And earthquakes, they're talking about worse storms and things like that. And just in the news, there was a couple of earthquakes just recently. Like California had a couple, and off the coast of BC they had a few. I think that last one in California even had a little bit of damage. So it's interesting that what they're saying is going to happen with global warming or climate change is what actually we know from prophecy will happen at the end. How it happens, we're going to get into a little bit later. Now, there's a guy named Joseph Goebbels. He was a propaganda minister for Hitler in Germany, okay? And here's somebody talking about him, and then it quotes him. It says, "The Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels was well aware of the power of repetition in cloaking falsehoods in a garb of truth, stating," now this is a quote from him, "It would not be impossible to prove with sufficient repetition and a psychological understanding of the people concerned that a square is in fact a circle." Listen to that. That a square is in fact a circle. They are mere words, and words can be molded until they clothe ideas in disguise. And we got to be so careful with the media. They can basically tell the masses that a square is in fact a circle, and they say it often enough, and people will believe them. Not everybody, but the gullible, the people that think the government never lies to them, that the media never lies or gets things wrong, they would believe something as stupid that a square is a circle. So there's another quote here that's attributed to Goebbels. It says, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." Now, this is attributed to Goebbels, but the thing is, where I saw it was on the Jewish Virtual Library. And then after that I saw, oh, well, he didn't really actually say it. But on the Jewish Virtual Library, they still got it as him saying it. But whoever said it, this is the agenda about people that want to deceive us. They tell a lie often enough, and if you tell a lie big enough, well, they would never lie about something that big that the earth is going to end because of climate change. Like, they wouldn't lie about that, right? So, I mean, this is what they're doing with climate change. This is what they're doing with the sodomite agenda, the vaccines, and you could go on and on. You just keep brainwashing, repeat, repeat, repeat. Repetition sells, they say in marketing. And if you don't think the repetition sells, if you listen to an ad on the radio, or if you have a television, you see that, all of a sudden you'll find yourself humming or singing the jingle on the radio. You know, like it works, okay? Repetition works. So they want everyone to be worried about climate change so that they can take away people's rights and freedoms, and so that people won't destroy the planet, right? Just imagine, you get people scared, and then you can take away their rights. What happened after 9/11? They took away people's privacy and rights because for the reason of security, right? We've got to protect you, so we've got to take away your rights. It doesn't make sense, but that's the way they sell it. Okay, in Mark chapter 4, you can go there if you want, but I'll read it here. Mark chapter 4, verse 35 says, "In the same day when the even was come, he saith unto them, Let us pass over unto the other side." So this is Jesus talking, when he says, "Let us pass over unto the other side." "And when they had sent away the multitude, they took him even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Okay, so is climate change true? It doesn't matter, because the wind and the sea obey Christ. The wind and the sea obey God. And he berates them. He says, Why are you so fearful? Okay, how is it that you have no faith? You shouldn't be worried about this storm. You had Jesus on the boat. Okay, like, how much closer to God could you get? Okay, so go to Genesis chapter 6. So is climate change true? Well, not the way the world is describing it, okay? Because we know what I read before is that the earth abideth forever, okay? So they think the earth is just going to end, everybody's going to die, there's going to be nothing left on the earth. And we know God controls the weather. So let's just not worry about the weather or the climate change, but let's concern ourselves rather with pleasing God, because if God controls the weather, He controls the climate, He controls whether or not we got a green area like we got here, or if we got a desert like we have in Arizona, okay? God controls everything. He controls the weather, and of course He gives people free will. I shouldn't say everything, because then people think I'm a Calvinist, but He controls all the weather. Okay, if you're there in Genesis chapter 6, let's look at verse 17. And it says, And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. So this sounds like climate change, doesn't it? He's going to bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh. Okay, jump over to the beginning of chapter 7. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. And notice, if you read through this fast, you might not catch it, but it says, Come thou. When you tell somebody to come, that means you want them to come towards you, right? And it says, into the ark. And that means God was in the ark and He was telling Noah to come in. Okay? It's an interesting thing there that God was in the ark. And then, of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. just imagine if it rained now for 40 days and 40 nights, and we know it never will again flood the earth because God gave us the rainbow and He promised. But if it started raining for a whole week and didn't stop, we'd start thinking we've got severe climate change. Or I shouldn't say we would think, but people would think that, right? And especially 40 days and 40 nights. And Noah did according to all that the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. Okay, and I think we all know the story, what happens. Let's jump down to verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. So it wasn't just rain, also the fountains from in the earth opened up, and water came out of there. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Jump down to verse 17. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lifted up above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth. And the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. So you want to talk about climate change? That's climate change there. I mean, for the whole earth was wiped out. Just he was on a boat, okay, a ship. And before those people drowned, it probably felt like climate change to them too. You're probably talking about carbon tax and carbon footprint. No, they're probably just running for their lives, trying to get the high ground, and realizing even the high ground was too low. And those of them that had heard the preaching of Noah would have said, "Oh, I should have listened to him. I should have gone on the ark." But the other thing is, I don't think it had even rained to this point. So just even it raining was climate change there. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 5 and 6, it says, "And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for the Lord had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground." So we know at least at that time, in Genesis chapter 2, it says God had not caused it to rain upon the earth yet. Okay? And just a mist came from the earth and it watered the whole face of the ground. So, and you're not even used to rain, and it starts raining, and then, yep, climate change. Gotta start driving electric vehicles. Okay, go to James chapter 5. So, we'll look at another example of climate change in the Bible. 1 Kings 17:1, it says, "And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word." Okay? So God was with Elijah, and Elijah says to Ahab, "It's not going to rain unless I say so." Okay? If somebody would tell you that, you think they're off their rocker. Okay? Yeah, we realize marijuana is legal now in Canada, but you shouldn't be overdoing it. I shouldn't be smoking at all. But if somebody says that it's not going to rain unless he says so, but if it's a man of God like this, and he's got a track record, and you actually believe him, obviously you might actually believe him. But then in 1 Kings 18, verse 1, this is just the next chapter, it says, "And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go show thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." So the 3rd year, he was supposed to go to Ahab and tell him that God was going to send rain. And Elijah went to show himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. Okay, so it hasn't been raining for over 3 years, and there's a sore famine. Well, no kidding. I mean, we just had it dry a little bit last year, and people had a shortage of hay for their cattle, and the price of hay went up. But just imagine 3 years in a row like that. The cattle are going to die. Yeah, the first year you maybe butcher all the cattle, but back then they didn't even have freezers to keep all that meat frozen for that long. And so there's a famine. There wasn't enough food to eat. Verse 3 says, and Ahab called Obadiah, which was the governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. For it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord that Obadiah took 100 prophets, and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. And Ahab said unto Obadiah, go into the land, unto all fountains of water, and unto all brooks, peradventure we may find grass to save the horses and mules alive, that we lose not all the beasts. So Obadiah and Ahab were supposed to, Ahab was saying to Obadiah, go look, see if we can find enough grass to keep the mules and horses alive. Like, never mind the cattle, he's just talking about the horses and mules at this point. So it says, so that we lose not all the beasts. So obviously they lost, a lot. So God can and will change the climate. Remember what climate was, right? It was the weather average over a series of years. There wasn't rain on the earth for 3.5 years at that time, Elijah. So that is starting to be at least a small bit of climate change. Obviously God made it rain after that and it changed back. But that is climate change according to the definition. If you average it over those 3 years, it has changed from the previous 3 years. And if you would read through Jeremiah, okay, when Jeremiah is talking about all the judgment God is going to put on different lands, and for example, Babylon, okay, in chapter 50, Jeremiah 50, in verse 10, it says, and Chaldea shall be a spoil, all that spoil her shall be satisfied, saith the Lord, because you were glad, because you rejoiced, O ye destroyers of mine heritage. Because you are grown fat as the heifer at grass, and bellow as bulls. Your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. Now listen to this. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Okay, so that was going to be climate change for Babylon, because it's going to go to a dry land and a desert. Because of the wrath of the Lord it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues. So Babylon got climate change. Okay, so it sounds like it used to be more of a green area, then it turned more to a desert, a dry land. So the question is, what can we do about it if God changes the climate like he did in Elijah's day? So if you're there in James chapter 5, let's look at what it says there, verse 13. James chapter 5, verse 13. Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. And if ye have committed sins, they shall be forgiven him. Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that ye be healed, that ye may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Remember, there's 2 points to that. Having effectual fervent prayer and being a righteous man. Verse 17, Elias, that's talking about Elijah, that's what he's called in the New Testament. Elias was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. Okay, so that's telling us right there that it didn't rain for 3.5 years during Elijah's time. But we read before, it said in the 3rd year he was supposed to go talk to Ahab. I thought it didn't rain for 3.5 years. Well, in the Bible, the way they count days and years, it's like they start at year 0. So this isn't the first year now. This is year 0. The next year is year 1, and then the year after is year 2, and the year after that is year 3. Okay? Just like I've heard in Europe, the ground floor is 0, and then the second, what we call second floor, is floor 1. And it makes sense to me because I've learned PLC programming for electrical, and you start with the number 0. And when we're counting, we don't start with number 0. Like, we don't say, okay, we count people 0, 1, because then we'd be 1 short. But when you're talking about years, then that's how they did it. Because you're talking about how many years from now. Well, it's 3.5 years total, but the second year is year 1. I hope that makes sense. So he prayed that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. Verse 18, and he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth a sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death and shall hide a multitude of sins. Okay? So what can we do about it? We can pray. Okay? And we can convert sinners so that there will be more of a righteous remnant in Canada. And it says a fervent prayer. We can pray about it. But of a righteous man. Okay? So it availeth much if you're a righteous man. If you're just a backslidden Christian, I don't think that your prayer is going to avail as much as a fervent prayer of a righteous man. In 2 Chronicles chapter 7, you can go there, or if you want, you can get ahead to Revelation chapter 12. But 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 13, it says, if I shut up heaven, that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Notice it doesn't say if all the people. It says if my people, which are called by my name. We're called by one of God's names. We're Christians. Okay? Christ is one of Jesus' names, and we're called Christians. So we're his people. We're called by his name. But notice what it says we're supposed to do. We're supposed to humble ourselves and pray. Not be proud, not think we've gotten to where we are through our own strength and through our own wisdom. We should humble ourselves and pray and seek his face and turn from our wicked ways. Okay? There's a lot of saved people out there that are backslidden, and we sometimes get backslidden. And if we turn from our wicked ways and we humble ourselves and we pray, if all the Christians in Canada would do that, don't you think God would bless this land? It says right here, he will forgive their sin and will heal their land. And we should do that. Just never mind heal the land as in climate or weather or, things like physical things like that. Never mind that. Get the sodomites out of the land. Okay? Get the murderers, like the abortionists out of the land. They heal the land that way. It's people that are called by his name. We need to start it. We need to convert people. We need to humble ourselves and pray and live a righteous life. So if you're there, before we get to Revelation 12, I'll read for you from Mark 13, verse 8. So turn to Revelation 12. Mark 13, verse 8 says, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be earthquakes in diverse places. There shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. So earthquakes have been in the news a little bit lately. And of course, we hear stories about flooding, what happened in Nebraska, and we've had flooding in Manitoba in the past. But nothing to what this extent will be here, where it talks about Mark 13 or Matthew 24. So, the Bible tells us, in these passages about earthquakes and famines and pestilences and all these things. So we know there's going to be climate change, because climate change, in order for there to be famine, unless there's a different way that famine gets made, but famine often is because of lack of rain, and lack of rain would be climate change, And we know there will be global warming. The Bible tells us that, But it's not going to be the way these people are talking about it. The world will not end, as in there will cease to be life on the earth. That's not going to happen. If you're there, Revelation chapter 12, let's look at verse 7. Revelation 12, verse 7 says, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So this is some future event, and people want to say the devil's in hell right now with a pitchfork, he's ruling and reigning there. And that's just not true according to the Bible. The devil hasn't even been cast out of heaven yet. Like in the book of Job, it talks about the devil coming before God, and and the devil and God started talking about Job, okay? So he was, at that point, he wasn't in hell yet, and today he's still not in hell yet, because this is a future event. Verse 10, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So the devil's going to be cast down from heaven onto earth, and he's going to be mad, because he knows he only has a short time to work as much wickedness as he can. And look what happens in verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times and half time from the face of the serpent. So if you count that up, a time, and times it's more than one, so that's 2 more. That's 3.5 times. It's 3.5 years, okay, that she can fly into the wilderness, into her place, and she can be nourished for a time. So she can escape that in between. In verse 15, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. Okay, so a flood, that sounds like something to do with climate. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Okay, so first of all, he's persecuting the woman, and he's persecuting her seed, which is just mankind. I believe this woman is probably a symbol of Eve. So Satan is trying to kill all mankind in a short time. But then he makes somehow make water come out of his mouth in a flood. Okay, that sounds like a man-made, or obviously the devil's empowering them, a manufactured flood. Okay, and if you have a big enough flood, well, you can kill lots of people, be less food, and so on. But the earth helped the woman, so somehow the earth opened up and the water went into the earth. So that's good. But then after that, it says he was wroth with the woman. That means he was mad. And went to make war with the remnant of her seed. This is verse 17. Which keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. So then he switches his focus over to basically just Christians. But not just Christians, but those that keep the commandments of God. Okay, it's the Christians that actually aren't backslidden, the righteous people. That's the one he wants to target, because the backslidden Christians aren't trying to spread Christianity. They're not trying to spread the gospel, trying to convert sinners. Okay, so he wants to target those. Just like, let's say you got a vermin infestation. If you got only limited time, you're going to try to get the females, the one that reproduce, right? Because they might all of a sudden have like a litter of 10 new rats. I don't know how many rats have at a time, but whatever. You pick the animal that's a pest or vermin. And so you would try to trap and shoot all the females because they reproduce in that case. Well, same thing with Satan. He's trying to kill the Christians that reproduce, that are fruitful, that get other people saved, because he's got such a short time, because otherwise it'll spread and there'll be more of them. So I think that there's a good chance, like the ones that we read about the famines and the pestilences, and then of course the pieces can be taken from the earth and the war, I think that's going to be manufactured. Or you just think of the chemicals that they put on grain nowadays, and then you got to spray it. Like I found out, I think it was yesterday, they spray it multiple times, like up to 10 times or something like that, right? Yeah, and it's like, well, you got to buy the seed from a certain company like Monsanto, or now it's called Bayer. And if through globalization or merging of corporations, pretty soon there's only one company you can deal with, or very few. They're controlled by the wicked people, then pretty soon there's going to be a famine, because even though, let's say you have a piece of land, you can't afford to buy the seed, or different things like that. They could develop a pest even. Let's say pestilence. Remember when all these things that look like ladybugs, it was like the Japanese beetles they brought in here to control something in the canola. Well, and all of a sudden you got like your whole wall in the house just full of them. Just imagine if that was a more aggressive pest, like some kind of locust or a grasshopper. It would just eat your whole crops, or everything that's green turns and withers away because the grasshoppers ate it. And so it'll be look like climate change, and then what will happen? The Antichrist will come in to save the day. He's going to be the hero. He's going to look like a hero. Now there's a quote from a guy named Rahm Emanuel, and he was the chief of staff for Obama, but I think there's other people that have said things similar. And what he said was, you never want a serious crisis to go to waste. Okay? So when you have something bad happen in the world, let's say like 9/11, you don't want it to go to waste, because now you've got people scared. Now you can bring in these laws that they wouldn't have fallen for before that. Or you get some school shooting. You want to take advantage of that crisis, so you can take away people's guns. Now they will no longer be able to hunt for their own food. They won't be able to defend themselves. In Canada, we're not even supposed to use them for defending ourselves. Even if we have them, we're just supposed to let an intruder come and hurt us and not even try to defend us, because they're only for shooting paper. Things like that. So they never want a serious crisis to go to waste. Not only that, I think they manufacture crises, however you say the plural of that, just so they can further agenda even quicker. They can expedite it. Okay, here's an article in newscientist.com was the webpage. I'll just read you a part of it. It says, climate change could bring about the end of civilization as we know it within 3 decades. So they're saying within 30 years, civilization could end. And an Australian think tank has warned. Okay? The report by Breakthrough, endorsed by a retired Australian admiral. So an admiral is somebody that's like, I think he's even more than just the captain of a ship. I think maybe of a fleet, but at minimum he's like the captain of one ship, a warship. And so this is a retired Australian admiral. It says a wartime response is needed to avoid the doomsday scenario. So he's saying basically we got to use force to make people change their ways. Okay? Now it's not just carbon tax and paying environmental levy fees when you want to buy oil in a plastic container, or Trudeau even wants to ban, or maybe has banned already, single-use plastics. It's not only just doing crazy stuff like that. Now it's like we need a wartime response, like basically a gunpoint. Just like I was talking about vaccines before, there's a place where they were going to vaccinate people, I think it was in Africa, and like 200 people hid, or more, I think it was more than 200 people, hid out and ran into the bush. They managed to gather 200 of them, basically made them vaccinate their children at gunpoint. Okay, so that's like a wartime response for vaccination. And the stupid thing is there'll be so many people that'll agree that this is necessary, because otherwise our whole civilization is going to die within 30 years. We've got to do something about it. They're scared. So they're going to be for it. And they've told the lie often enough and often enough on the radio, on internet, on television. Our planet is going to be in serious trouble if we don't do something about it. Meanwhile, these people have got their own corporate private jets and things like that. They don't really care about the environment. We'll drink from our plastic paper drink box thing like Trudeau said. He couldn't even talk about it clearly, thinking that somehow that was better than a plastic water bottle. But yeah, they're thinking of a wartime response to this. And I think at the end times, climate change is one of the tools that they can use to control the people, because they've scared them enough. Vaccination is another way they can control the people and scare them. They're already talking about that unvaccinated children shouldn't go to public school. Well, I don't think any children should go to public school. That's the wrong thing to even talk about. But just, they could go, no unvaccinated people should be in public places. Okay, now you don't have a vaccination. It's almost like the mark of the beast. You don't have that vaccination, you can't even go buy and sell because you can't go in public. The things like that can use to control people. And I think in the end times, they're probably going to use a combination of different things like that. But it's just crazy that there's people that are already saying it publicly that a wartime response is needed to avoid the doomsday scenario. And there will be climate change for a few years when God pours out his wrath on this earth. Good thing we're gone. 3.5 years of tribulation, but then we're gone when the trumpet sounds. Jesus is going to come back with his saints. We're going to be out of here. And then God's going to pour out his wrath. That's when climate change starts to happen. When it rains fire and brimstone from the sky. And the trees and grass are burned up. Okay? When the star wormwood falls and a lot of the water is made bitter. That's serious climate change. Okay? Or when Elijah and Moses come back. I think those are the two witnesses, right? And what does it say about those two witnesses? That they have power to shut heaven that it doesn't rain. Just like when Elijah did, he prayed to God and it didn't rain for 3.5 years. They're going to have that power when they come back as witnesses. Then they will have serious climate change. And not only that, all these unbelievers, the moment they die, they experience severe climate change. They go from a livable weather we have here straight down to hell where they're burning for eternity. And after that, that climate's never going to change for them. Okay, they're going to have severe global warming. The only thing that changes is that hell gets thrown into the lake of fire, but it's still burning, it's still hot. So that's climate change. And they're going to wish that the climate will change again, and it will never again for them. But when we come back, we'll have a change also, okay? So let's say when we're in heaven, we come back for the millennium. I don't know what it's going to be like during the millennium, okay? I'm not saying it's going to be all perfect. We're not going to have freezing weather here in Manitoba anymore. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know, okay? But then after the millennium, the earth, the Bible says, will be made new, and there will be no more sea, okay? So I think definitely in the New Jerusalem is going to be climate change, because you won't even have no need of the sun, because Jesus Christ is there, and he's going to be the light of that city. So that'll be like climate change. So I just want to end in Revelation chapter 21. Just a few chapters over from where you are in Revelation 12 there. So Revelation 21, verse 1. It says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea." Okay, so when it says there, the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, it doesn't mean this whole ball gets thrown somewhere else and we get a new ball to be on. And no, it's not just a flat disc, it's a ball. That just means everything is made new. Okay, actually, if we just keep reading, it will tell us that. Verse 2, "And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." So this is the holy city coming down. "And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God." That's going to be great. Verse 4, "And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away." So we were talking about climate changes in weather, but the other definition of climate was just the social surroundings, kind of like, or like the environment as far as people. Well, there's going to be no more crying. Okay, it's going to be happy. That kind of climate change from being depressed in this world to always being happy after that. No more sorrow or crying. But then in verse 5 it says, "And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful." Okay, so all things are made new. The earth that ball doesn't get thrown away. It just gets made new. Just imagine all the destruction after God pours out his wrath. And then, I don't know if it's immediately changed after that, at the beginning of millennium, or just starts healing itself when God brings rain and things like that. But then it's going to be nice for 1,000 years, and then it's going to get even better when New Jerusalem comes down. So, why do I preach about climate change? Well, the world is trying to use climate change and things like that to control people's thinking. And obviously, I think people in here are awake about what the media or whoever's behind the media is trying to do to us. But if we realize that people are trying to deceive us, then we might be skeptical about something else that we might not be as awake about. So we don't have to worry, about climate change. We know they will get climate change when they die. And God could make, the climate change here to judge the people, because let's say we got so many people in the pride parade or whatever, and he shuts heaven that doesn't rain for 3.5 years. He could do that, okay? But he will never do it to the point that all civilization is going to end, that all the people are going to die. We know what, we've read the last chapter of the Bible, we know what's going to happen. Things are going to get great again after that. But we should not be fooled, but we should also realize that there's people out there trying to deceive us, and that we should try to get people saved, okay, so that they're no longer deceived by things like that, but most of all so that they will not experience the worst climate change ever. Okay, so let's pray.